Hello, the sound of the computer can only mean one thing. It is time for our August reviews. Yay! Hello, if you're new, my name's Raquel, as the name suggests, and every month I sort of wrap up everything that I have consumed that month, be it books, movies, TV shows, theatre, whatever else, and I discuss whether or not I enjoyed them. Spoiler alert, usually I have. But I just quickly go through everything, and I always welcome discussion in the comments if there's anything that I've said that you agree with or disagree with, or a book you've read or listened to something to listen to, I don't know. Basically, I like sharing my thoughts and I like hearing yours. I have a lot of books for this month, so I'm gonna start because we just need to crack on. So to begin with, I've just got one movie, which is called Weapons. We just kind of on a whim decided to go and see it. And it was okay. And there were things to like about it. It wasn't the most terrifying, scary. It was a scary movie, but it wasn't scary, in my opinion. There were moments, and there were a couple of jump scares, maybe. Not even loads, I think maybe one or two. But it was definitely not terrifying. And there were things about it that I found incredibly frustrating. It was already something that couldn't be based on truth, just because of the way it was, which is fine. But then there were things that were happening that I was just like, if this was real life, this is not how it would go. This is not how you would react. And that often happens in things like this, you know, scary things, where really it's only scary because of miscommunication or a lack of communication. So yeah, I did enjoy it, but like it wasn't anything special. Okay, next up, one TV show, and we have finally, I don't know if we started it this month, but we definitely finished Squid Game Season 3. We watched Squid Game when it first came out, then we watched Season 2 a couple of months ago, and we were both not particularly excited to be finishing it. We were just kind of like, okay, we're gonna finish it because we have to, but we weren't thrilled about it. And honestly, it was a bit underwhelming. A lot of shows find it hard to wrap up their series. The only time I really felt a show hit the nail on the head with its finale was Manifest. But this one felt particularly frustrating and a little bit unclear as well, although the clarity problem might be mine. I think I've mentioned many a time on here that I'm very bad with faces and characters and remembering who's who, and I don't, like, especially when it's not in English, and we watched it in Korean, and that's fine, and I enjoy, you know, watching things authentically, obviously with subtitles. We don't speak Korean. But I do think that had me even more confused than I usually already am. And so things were happening with certain characters that I didn't, like, get the significance of it. But yeah, it felt pretty frustrating, to be honest. It wasn't what we wanted it to be. But hey, we still enjoyed it, so it's alright. Okay. Now we are on to 11 books. I don't even know how this happened. It suddenly I kept reading. I do generally listen to audiobooks, which does help me because it means I can A, listen on double speed, but B, listen whilst doing something else. So that helps me get through a lot of books. And then sometimes I also read ebooks while I'm at work if it's quiet. So that also helps. And two of these books, although I won't say which, also overlap with another video that I'm making that's taking much longer to film and edit because it's got to do with multiple books that are gonna span a while. But I will talk about those two books in more depth in that video. So first of all, I finally read The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. I watched the movie probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and we saw the musical probably about 3 years ago, I would say. And I love stuff to do with time travel. That's really right up my street. But having seen the musical or the movie first, maybe my expectations, you know, would be warped or whatever. This one was actually a combination of audio and ebook. I mostly listened to it as an audio, but I think towards the end I did some ebook reading. It was long, but I loved it. I wish it was longer. It was so gorgeous, so sad, and I knew that going in, but it's still sad. Do you know what? Upon reflection, I just said to you that it could have been longer, but reading my own comments that I left when I finished it, I wrote, bit long, but beautiful. So maybe at the time I felt like, okay, we're ready to wrap it up. I don't know. At times it was hard to keep track of the time travel, but that's also especially, I think, audio, because I think it was easier when you could actually see the date. But yeah, beautiful book, highly recommend. Next, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. I am a big fan of Emily Henry. I think the first book I read by her was Book Lovers, so like obviously that was going to be the best one for me. But I've read a few by her that I've enjoyed. This one was maybe my least favourite of hers. I still enjoyed it, it was still fine, but it just wasn't anything special. It didn't feel like it had anything to it, really. Like, it was fine. It wasn't bad, but it was definitely, I think, my least favourite of her books so far. I still have more to catch up on though, so we'll see. Then I read The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This is also a pretty big book. I can't remember exactly, but decent sized. And I think I was recommended by Hannah Whitten. I think she must have mentioned how much she loved it. And it's one that I never would have sort of found myself even finding or being interested in or anything. But I loved this book. I listened to it as an audiobook and I more or less smashed through it, I think, in 2 days. Maybe a little bit longer, but I really enjoyed it. And it's funny because the story and the characters and the setting probably isn't what I would usually drift towards at all, but just something about the way the writing was and also maybe the voices of the audiobook, it really ticked a lot of boxes for me. I kept wanting to read it. You know, it was one of those I didn't want to stop. So yeah, definitely recommend that. And I did love the setting as well of it being sort of in the Middle East and a setting that I'm just not quite as familiar with. So yeah, enjoyed it. Next, it wasn't actually a book, I realised as soon as I started listening to it. It was I Know Where the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, but it was the BBC Radio 4 dramatisation. And to me, it's a shame that it wasn't just the book. It was fine, but I didn't love the audio that I was listening to. And I don't feel like I got anywhere near as much out of it as I think I would have if I'd just read the book. So maybe one day I will search for it and read it. But yeah, it was fine. Next, I read To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, and this was tough. After I finished it, I was reading reviews, and I can see why people would enjoy it, but it's a very, very specific style of writing that just did not work for me in the slightest. It's also obviously older and, you know, more classic or whatever, but I really struggled to focus on it, and I really struggled to, want to keep reading it. It really felt like a drag. So I was very happy when it was done. Next, another short one, I think, Killing the Dead by Marcus Sedgwick. I actually think this is a short story or a novella. It was fine. I don't think it really did very much for me. Again, not a bad book, but just, yeah, a bit meh. It was a book, and it felt a bit predictable as well. Next, I read The Last Agent in Paris by Sharon Mass, which I did really enjoy. It was very interesting and, very good. And I didn't realise until quite late on that it was based on a true story, which obviously makes it even more interesting to me. But there was something about the writing itself that I just didn't love. It wasn't bad, but it felt, I don't know, maybe a bit amateur. I don't know. It was very interesting. It did feel very factual based off what I've read, although, obviously liberties were taken where they were necessary. And I did really enjoy the book. It's just the writing that I was like, But again, this one was an audiobook, so maybe the voices were not as great. I don't know. I enjoyed it. Then, my only non-fiction of the month, actually. Oh no, I had another one. Educated by Tara Westover. I really enjoyed this. This was very interesting to me. Tara comes from a survivalist family in America, and it's sort of her experience living in that family, but then also how she tried to get out. And it was just very, very interesting. I don't really feel I know much about survivalist families or sort of the way, I am so ignorant to it. But there are people out there, a lot of the time while I was reading this book, I had to remind myself that it was non-fiction and based on truth. Because I kept being like, oh, but that wouldn't really happen. And then realising that no, it had. So yeah, very interesting, would recommend. Next, I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. I don't even know how this one ended up on my to-read list, but I do feel like it's been there a while. It was sweet. It was like a cozy book, but it was very average. It didn't feel... Again, it felt, it's a book, But I did enjoy it. I do think maybe I read it a little bit too early. If I'd read it sort of now as it's getting a bit grayer and, more autumnal, wintry, then it would be a bit better. But I was still reading it during heat waves. And so it just didn't, I don't know, it just felt like it's more of an autumn book. But it was sweet. I did enjoy it. And then I also read the prequel by the same author called Bookshops and Bone Dust. And really, I felt the same way. Again, it was sweet. I think I preferred the original. Although interestingly, I think I followed this one better because the first book I read as audiobook and the second book I read as ebook. And I feel like it being an ebook made me concentrate harder. But yeah, it was fine. It was sweet. It was okay. I don't know, I don't have many words to describe it. If you're looking for a cozy, easy read that's sort of set in a magical world, this probably is the right book for you. But if you're looking for anything groundbreaking, maybe not this one. And then finally, the second non-fiction of the month, I read The Survivor by Joseph Lefkovich. As you may know, I like to read a lot of Second World War books. And again, I don't really know how this one ended up on my to be read list, but it was there. It was really interesting and a very interesting and different story. That's the thing that amazes me so much when I read non-fiction Second World War books. Because you think, oh, by now I've probably read it all and stories will sound the same. And yet every single individual has their own journey, their own experience, and it is different. And the way they perceive it and the way they're sort of treated and all these, and the people they come across, it's so interesting. So I did enjoy it from that perspective. It was very moving as well, of course. But I felt like I would have liked to spend a bit more time during the war period, his experience in the war. It was obviously covered, but it felt like it was a relatively small percentage of the book, whereas a lot more was about sort of the after, which is also interesting and is so important to focus on, of course. But it would have been interesting to read a bit more about the during war period. Although there was also some about pre-war, which was very interesting because often people won't talk about that in their books. So yeah. Overall, I would say actually, now that I'm looking at it, quite a swingy month. Some excellent books, some not great, and some sort of average. Anyway, moving on to musicals. We've got 3. I'm very excited about this. Although actually, all 3 weren't very special, but we'll talk about them individually. So first of all, Tina, the Tina Turner musical. I know it's closing soon. In fact, by the time you're watching this, it may already be closed. And so for that reason alone, I was curious, but it's never been one that has sort of spoken to me. I'm not really that familiar with Tina's music, and so it doesn't feel that important to me. And maybe because I'm not so familiar with the music, or maybe because, I don't know, something else. But I just wasn't wowed by it. I enjoyed it. There were definitely things to enjoy about it, but it was just okay. I think that's all really that I've got to say about it. Next, we went to see 101 Dalmatians. This show was so silly. It definitely felt like it was more aimed for kids, and so we couldn't enjoy everything, I think, but it was so ridiculous, and it did bring us a lot of joy. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it, but we had fun, and I would love to play Danielle. I feel like that would be a good role for me, I'd like to think. And finally, I've just realised this last one was actually a September one. We only saw it last night. So stay tuned for next month, I guess. Subscribe if you want to find out which show that was and how I felt about it. Then for food, I've got 2 items. Number 1 is just smoothies. I've been bringing back smoothies this month and it's been making me very happy. It's very enjoyable. I've not had smoothies in probably years. Homemade, at least. And then the second one is a garlic butter pasta that we made on Saturday night. We found the recipe on Instagram and we said it looked really good, so we tried to make it and it was very, very tasty. So we will be making that again. For travel, I've just got one and I don't really know if it should go in travel or something else, but it's Legoland. We had a lot of fun. I've vlogged the whole experience, but we didn't have the best of luck. We did go on the last Sunday before school holidays ended, so maybe that also didn't help. But yeah, we did have a good time. There was a lot to enjoy about it. But there were also some things that just didn't quite go how we would have liked them to go. And finally, in the category of other, I've been watching a new YouTube channel called Clutterbug, which has definitely made me want to get onto decluttering. So there'll probably be a video of me decluttering some stuff at some point, but very satisfying to watch. I enjoy her videos. And I do like her energy, although I can see how it might get a bit much for some people. And very lastly, I always like to end on a song of the month, and for this month, Dodie released a new song, so I Feel Bad For You, Dave is the song of the month. I'm gonna close my laptop. Silence, isn't that nice? I need to figure something out about that. Maybe I'll transfer them in future. Anyway, those were all my thoughts of everything that I experienced and consumed this month. Let me know if you've read any of the books, seen any of the shows, seen anything or know of anything that I'm talking about and how you felt about it. I always like to hear, as I said earlier, people's opinions. You don't have to agree with me. I like to hear other opinions. And I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye!